I'm going to show today is how our company has integrated new technology, and more in particular 3D printing. Our company, Foster & Partners, was founded, we're definitely not a startup, we were founded about 47 years ago by Lord Foster. And to give you a really kind of quick overview of what we do, this slide kind of shows it. We're architectural designers, but we have a huge scope of the kind of things we design. Anything from infrastructure, like the Millau Bridge that you see there, to huge airports, but also furniture and even door handles. So anything in between that. We work on a global scale as well. And we're going to tell you a little bit how technology is actually crucial in our design process. So part of what I do, I head our specialist modeling group, which looks at digital design tools. So over the last 2 decades or more actually, designing our buildings on a digital level has been crucial. We need to digitally prototype what we do because we can't quickly mock one up. We only have one go at it. So for us, a digital workflow is extremely important, and we actually kind of analyze, model, and simulate our buildings before we even build them. What is also important in our process, which you might be surprised by, is that physical model making, or making maquettes in French, is actually as important in our business. So, and in our design process. So we have about 50 people, 50 actually kind of artisan or very skilled craftspeople that make our physical models. So the digital and the physical is really important. They're like 50-50 in our design process. Now, a few years ago, it's quite a few years ago, it's about 2008, we were asked by a company called Yachtplus to design a boat, a yacht. It's kind of interesting, and one of our head of designs always told me, well, this is the point where you're asked to do something where you step outside your comfort zone, that interesting things happen, right? So we were asked to design a boat, a yacht. This is a 41-meter yacht. It's a fleet, actually. And as usual, we started to use our digital tools to design this. Many different options, hundreds of these options. What we figured out is that we were able to kind of really design this really accurately with our digital tools. And these are a few iterations of that yacht. But what became apparent that the slightest actually change in that really complex surface of that boat made a huge difference. So we wanted to somehow have it as a physical object as well. So we, again, had our kind of model makers making really quickly some of these yachts. But the problem was that there was a kind of a discontinuity between very quickly being able to do it on a digital level, but physically, we weren't that fast. Our model makers normally took about a few weeks to make one of these. I wanted to have one of these models every 2 days. So I went out, and this was around 2004. It's about a decade ago. So I looked at, is there technology out there that can really take what I have digitally, make something physical? And of course, this was the beginning of 3D printing. Well, actually, 3D printing has been around since 1990, so it wasn't really the beginning, but we were one of the first architecture firms to actually purchase one of these, which was our first 3D printer. Tested a few out, decided after a month which one we're going to go with, and use it on this yacht project, where you can see this is the physical representation. This is about a model about this size. Now, what we quickly understood that this was not a technology that we used only to have this kind of final, beautiful model, but this was more of a way to have it in a design process. So this was my desk at that time, around 2000 and, I don't know when it was, 8 or something, no, 2004, sorry, where I was able to print different options, different representations of that one digital model. And a few years later, this was the result, and we're very happy with it, actually. Especially if you kind of see here, you kind of start to understand how important it was to get these lines absolutely perfect. And this is another shot of it. But that wasn't it. A lot of other project teams in the office saw this happening, and they said, well, we can use this as well for our project. So it started to, within about a few months, loads of different projects started to use it. And what happened with one printer, 6 months later we bought our second one, third, fourth, fifth. And this is where we are now. So we have about 8 machines. And interestingly enough, the last 2 ones are actually not prototyping machines anymore. These are machines that are now even used by the Formula 1 teams to produce parts that are raced with. Right? These are still plastic parts for air intakes and all that. So we are able to kind of almost manufacture on a manufacturing level, a really high detailed level. And we started realizing now models that would have taken a model maker maybe, let's say, a week or 2 weeks to make, I could print one out overnight. So this is really one model every night. Right? We have the process now that it is less than 12 hours turnaround of you giving a model to one of our printing lab and getting it back in a nice box on your desk. It actually all happens overnight. So you can give it at 6 in the evening. Our team comes in early in the morning, and by 9 o'clock in the morning, there's a box on your desk with a new model. We also start to realize we can do way more complex things that you couldn't have made by hand. These are kind of just more kind of artistic objects that we made just to try how far can we push this technology. You know, there's no way somebody could made of these by hand. And we also start to print bigger stuff. So we thought, well, actually, we can make bigger models with this. And once you made it quite a big one, you start to think as an architect, you thought, well, actually, this part is not maybe a prototype, but this is a part as big as what I could find in a building. So we start to think, can we actually take the next step? We're going from prototyping to actually making parts, making architecture. So we hooked up, this is around 2006, we hooked up with a university, Loughborough University, and some other companies, and we started to make our own concrete printer. Concrete is a material used in architecture, so we thought, can we actually use the same technology with a material that we know? So this is actually the kind of 2 first concrete printers in the world. And what we could do with that is instead of squirting out a bit of plastic, we're squirting out concrete. And this is kind of the first prototypes that we could get out of this. So a bit of wall, a bit of panel, so you can start to imagine how this could, in principle, start to change architecture. It's quite a leap in a way. You might think like the next thing what we do, we maybe build a small building with this. But we kind of took actually quite a big leap. And our next project in 3D printing on a real scale became this one. And we were asked by the European Space Agency to see if we could use 3D printing to 3D print a moon base, right? Not the actual moon base, but really the kind of the protection shield around it. Now, this is actually a really interesting process because if you think of it, if you're on the moon, the environment is extremely harsh, right? You have huge temperature differences of about minus 100 to plus 100. You have meteorite impacts, you know, there's no atmosphere, so meteorites do impact on you. That's why the moon is full of craters. There's also gamma radiation. So there's huge environmental parameters that actually kind of define this design. Now, and also, one of the interesting points is that bringing a kilogram of material to the moon costs about 200,000 pounds. That's an average. So actually using local materials, and what we use here is actually we 3D print moon dust that is everywhere and available on the moon to actually create that shelter. I'm going to leave it at this. I can talk about this probably for like 20 minutes. What I'm just going to do, I'm going to show a 3-minute video of it.
Planet Earth is protected by the atmosphere, the layer of air and gas that surrounds it. The atmosphere shields the Earth from solar radiation, keeps the temperature balanced, and protects us from meteoroids. On the Moon's south pole, you can see almost perpetual sunlight on the horizon. This is the site of our lunar base. Conditions on the Moon are very different from those on Earth. Because the Moon has no atmosphere, there is no protection from solar radiation. There are extreme temperature fluctuations, and there is no protection from gamma radiation, and no protection from meteoroids. The lunar lander has detached from the rocket launch and is on a course to Shackleton's crater, the Moon's south pole. Inside the lander is a cylinder which contains an inflatable dome and 2 robot 3D printers. After the cylinder containing the habitation capsule has been unloaded, a dome is inflated from one end. This provides the support structure for construction, a little like scaffolding is used to build on Earth. The lunar habitation is built by a robot-operated 3D printer. At one end, it has a scoop to collect the regolith. In the centre are the containers for the printing material. At the other end, there is a robotic arm with a printing head. The robot collects regolith from the Moon's surface. Layers of this moon dust are built up over the dome to create the protective shell. This process takes about 3 Earth months. The shell is made up of a hollow, closed cellular structure. Under a microscope, it would look very similar to the close-up of a bird's bone. Like a bone, it is light and incredibly strong at the same time. When the lunar base is complete, it can house 4 people. Inside the dome, they are protected from meteorites, gamma radiation, and high temperature fluctuations. The original capsule functions as an airlock and technical support module. The skylights draw daylight into the living and workspaces, which are sheltered within a pressurized enclosure. This method is a pioneering advance in space-age construction. At Foster & Partners, we're used to designing for some of the world's most extreme climates. We often use materials found locally to create sustainable buildings on Earth. While the Moon is an exciting new territory for architecture, the value of this logic endures.
Thank you.